Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Silent Hill, starring Rhoda Mitchell, Sean Bean, Laurie Holden, Deborah Kara Unger, Kim Coates, Tanya Allen, Alice Cridge, and Jodelle Furland, and directed by Christoph Gans. And I remember going to theaters for this thing, even though it was based on a video game I didn't know at the time. But was it as good as I remember? I remember the ending being a little weird. But let's see if that remains true. Let's get into it. Rose and Christopher De Silva, played by Rhoda Mitchell and Sean Bean, lose their daughter Sharon, played by Jodelle Furland, as she almost commits suicide. And why does she do that? I guess she wants to put. She was possessed by some devil and she sleepwalks and wants to go to some kind of hell and starts screaming Silent Hill, which doesn't make much fucking sense as this movie is bloated and has a pretentious plot based on a video game. 2 years later, Sharon leans on a tree, while plays or yeah, Sharon plays around at the park and she mentions to her mother, what's her name? Rose? As Rose mentions to Sharon how she sleepwalks and says Silent Hill. Meanwhile, we see Chris is trying to contact his wife, who is continually ignoring his calls, as the trip didn't include him, as he begins looking up Silent Hill on the internet and learns it's in West Virginia and is considered a very haunting town. When I call, which I call bullshit at this point, as 30 years ago, there was a large underground fire that pretty much killed everyone. And there is the making. And is this making any sense? Hell to the motherfucking no. That night, Sharon and Rose pull into a Bram's gas station, which is within spitting distance, of Silent Hill. And Rose notices Sharon's pictures as it's a bunch of people burning in various buildings, like a church at a school or a school. Rose asks Sharon about them and swears she didn't draw those pictures, which a nearby police officer takes notice of this, and the cop may be pretty damn nervous as eventually she almost pulls Rose over, and after Chris tries to cancel the credit cards and the cop notices her license plate, and Rose drives away and gets into an accident, which is a cheap scare. And they see they're in Silent Hill as they see a sign, which doesn't make any sense either. The next morning, Rose wakes up with Sharon gone missing and gets out of the car and begins calling Sharon's name as she notices some black snow falling to the ground, which is rather fucking random, as she suddenly sees a little girl who looks exactly like Sharon running off randomly. Rose gets chased and eventually ends up atop some stairway leading down the below level. Things are going unbelievably dark, and Sharon takes out the lighters, and she turns it on and sees she is now standing atop some guard floor with falling apart walls, and basically it's the same hell world Sharon saw earlier. Which why can't we see the world of hell in her point of view? Which bugged me throughout the movie. She runs from some dead bodies and a Sharon look-alike, but as she chases her, and she finds a chain link fence between her and the girl, and a bunch of gray ghosts go after Rose, and Rose gets a banshee-sized wall and begins attacking her. She runs past them and finds a door, which she opens it and screams, but wakes up to a Johnny Cash song in the background, which is so goddamn random. I hate this sequence to death. Rose looks around, but the gray children are nowhere in sight, as it could be a dream or a hallucination. Please don't end like that, because I hate endings like that. She turns in disheveled and dirty, homeless woman, There's as she approaches the woman Dahlia Gillespie, played by Deborah Kara Ungarand, asking what's going on and tells her about Sharon, but Dahlia says we've all lost our children. When Rose gets more cryptic comments, she pulls out a locket picture as that is her daughter as she tries to attack Rose, but Rose hits her and runs away. And this movie is so bad I can't stand it. Chris is on a mission to find his wife and daughter and asks a mechanic if he's seen his wife, but he doesn't know anything. And cut the scene out because the movie's too long for a horror game movie. It's like at least 2 hours and 5 minutes. Rose heads back to her car and sees a picture of Sharon's blowing on the ground, and sees if it's of a school, and goes through some other pictures, and it's in Silent Hill, and tries to call Chris's cell phone, and he picks up, but all he hears is static, and she tells Chris what happened to. And she heads to a school, but tries to start the car. But Officer Sybil Bennett, played by Laurie Holden, whom I just reviewed just a moment ago in The Majestic, and her acting is the worst here than in The Mist or The Majestic. Hell, even in that 2005 Fantastic Four film, she was bad but puts Rose in handcuffs, and apparently did something famous with the young boy 3 years ago in the town, and has Rose in good condition, and none of these characters are good, and I don't like any of them in general, as this is an ugly looking fucking movie. Rose tries to tell Sybil that something is wrong with the town, and she keeps ignoring her, which is pretty goddamn typical of authority figures like herself. Sorry to disappoint cops. They get to Sybil's overturned police motorcycle and tries to radio in, but gets nothing but static, which makes no fucking sense. Rose yells at Sybil about not believing her, just as something comes out of the mountains that looks like a person, and honestly, I don't give a fuck whether they live or die by the end of the movie. As I'm not caring for this material, Rose tries to find an elementary school to find Sharon, as she finds the main office and grabs a set of keys to every door or drawer, which thankfully works, as this is going nowhere in my territory of liking this movie. Hell, this movie doesn't do a good job of anyone liking it whatsoever. Or maybe some more than others, I wouldn't say. And that's supposed to be daring, and this is the worst, and that's the worst thing a movie can do for an audience member. And I'm having a headache from watching this movie. Chris arrives in Silent Hill, and I just wanted this movie to get on with the scares, and so far I'm not frightened. I'm bored to death. That I can probably fall asleep, but luckily didn't for this review. And eventually, I was done with this movie at this point. Like, I wanted out as I was checked out of this movie. I have an hour and 15 minutes left and can I please get sleep? Because this movie gets more annoying with Anna, played by Tanya Allen, appearing in the picture as well. Rose, Sybil, and Anna look for room 111 at a hotel, and the room doesn't exist, but how convenient, as Rose realizes the whole town was founded by witch hunters. As she picks up a knife, the kitchen downstairs in tears tears the picture apart to find room 111. And they go inside and find the room is a little more storage closet, and they split up, and Rose finds a look-alike Sharon named, let me see if I'm saying this right, Alessa. And the effects are on her saying, "I'm burning," with fire in her arms, is pretty bad looking. And they get back together as the alarm sounds, and they bump into Dahlia as Rose tries to get her inside a church. And Dahlia says they brought about their own hell, and they'll take you with them. As Anna throws stuff at her and says filth and lies. And they go in the church, and their leader, Christabella, played by Alice Kriege, says these outsiders was not Anna's fault. And why the fuck am I still awake watching this movie? As I wanted to turn it off, but I have to continue for the show, unfortunately. Christabella finds out Rose is a witch, and Cybele defends her as Rose goes in the elevator and sacrifices herself to save Rose, and for her to find Sharon, in which I don't care. I was distracted by how many more minutes I have left in this pile of shit. We get a film kind of flashback of Alessa when she was alive as she goes back to the hotel and kills her as they're led to believe she's a witch, and I got nothing from this narration. Just Jesus Christ. Sharon is dropped off at an orphanage as scenes told us earlier that she was adopted, and I was busy not giving a fuck. Like I don't at this point And if I saw this in theaters at the age I am now, I would have walked out because it's so bad after the first 30 minutes. Sharon is getting prepared to burn her up, and Cybele, who happens to be still alive, is pulled down from her trapping spot, which is on a ladder, as Rose arrives. Rose arrives and she tries to get Christabella to tell the truth, as Rose tells the whole town the truth about Christabella, stabbing her in the chest, and the apocalypse begins by Rose spitting at some acid, looking blood, which looks terrible. Rose rises and some dramatic music comes on, and she uses her powers to scare the townspeople and kill Christabella, and the townspeople and rips Christabella and the townspeople in the half, including Dahlia, and Rose gets Sharon out of the trap, and the church and the Silent Hill, in the town of Silent Hill, and this whole goddamn movie, and I'm glad it's all over at this point. I just want it out. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 1.5 out of 10. This didn't scare me at all. It made me bored and fall asleep for a little bit. It was that bad. I can't fucking believe I sat through this whole fucking movie. The characters were batshit stupid as fuck, and the acting is horrible. And I would have walked out of this movie after the first 30 minutes, but we'll see if the sequel is worse. I don't remember it all that well. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Silent Hill Revelation. And until next time, let's escape Silent Hill.